The desert stretched endlessly under the burning suns, sand shifted in waves like a golden ocean, and the hot wind carried the taste of dust. A lone human walked across this alien land, his boots sinking into the soft dunes. His name was Eric, a traveler and a survivor. His clothes were torn from days of wandering, and his canteen was nearly empty. Eric had heard stories of this world, a place where strange creatures ruled and humans rarely lived. Traders spoke of beastwomen, half human and half predator, strong, tall, and dangerous. They said to meet one was to meet death. Yet here he was, alone and searching for shelter before nightfall. As the sun dipped lower, he felt eyes on him. The feeling was sharp, like a blade against his back. He froze, scanning the dunes. That was when he saw her. She stepped out from behind a jagged rock, her body tall and powerful. Her skin carried faint markings, patterns that glowed softly in the fading light. Her long dark hair whipped in the wind, and her amber eyes glared at him with animal intensity. Muscles rippled under her rough leather armor, and sharp claws flexed from her hands. She looked more beast than woman, but her face carried both beauty and terror. "Keep staring, and I'll strike," she growled. Her voice was low and edged with warning. Her stance was that of a predator ready to pounce. Eric raised his hand slowly, showing he carried no weapon in his grip. He knew one wrong move would end his life. But then something unexpected happened. She staggered, her leg buckled, and she nearly fell into the sand. Her breath came sharp, and for the first time, he saw weakness in her fierce frame. She lowered herself onto one knee, her hand gripping her thigh. That was when he noticed it, a thorn, long and dark, buried deep into her leg. It pulsed with a strange glow. Alien poison leaked from it. The wound looked fresh, yet the pain in her face showed it was unbearable. Her eyes snapped back to him, burning with fury. "You, human," she spat. "Pull it out now." Eric hesitated. His heart pounded like a drum. Helping her could mean saving his life, or losing it. He had heard that beast women never trusted outsiders. They would kill rather than show weakness. But here she was, demanding his help. He took a careful step forward. The sand crunched beneath his boots. She let out a low growl, warning him to move slowly. Her claws hovered near his chest, ready to tear him apart if he tried anything foolish. Kneeling before her, Eric studied the thorn. It was not natural. Its shape was jagged, like a weapon designed to torture. The flesh around it was swollen, red, and infected. Removing it would hurt, maybe even kill her if the poison spread. "You hesitate," she hissed, her eyes narrowing. "Do it, or I'll end you." Eric swallowed hard and reached for the thorn. His fingers brushed her skin, warm and trembling with tension. She flinched, but did not stop him. He wrapped his hand around the thorn and pulled. The beast woman let out a roar that echoed across the desert. Her claws dug deep into the sand beside him. Her whole body shook as the thorn ripped free. Dark blood spilled, and the strange poison dripped onto the ground, sizzling against the sand. Eric threw the thorn aside, breathing hard. He looked up to see her panting, her chest rising and falling like waves in a storm. Her amber eyes softened, just for a moment. "You helped," she said, her voice less sharp. It was not gratitude, not yet, but it was something close. The desert wind howled around them, carrying the sound of distant cries. Eric knew they were not alone. The air felt heavy with danger, and the horizon shimmered with shapes moving closer. The beast woman pushed herself to her feet, still unsteady but stronger without the thorn. She towered over him, her shadow stretching across the sand. She looked down at Eric, not with hatred now, but with suspicion and curiosity. "You are brave for a human," she muttered. Her tone carried both warning and respect. "But bravery can still get you killed." Eric stayed silent. His throat was dry. His mind raced with questions. Who was she? Why had she been wounded? And what hunted her in this desert? Before he could speak, she turned her head sharply. Her ears twitched, and her eyes narrowed at the distant dunes. "They are coming," she whispered. Her voice was like thunder in the quiet dusk. Eric followed her gaze. Shapes moved quickly through the sands, dark and fast. The air trembled with their cries. Whoever or whatever they were closing in. The beast woman's claws flexed again. Her wounds had not healed, but her spirit burned bright. She looked back at him, her amber eyes fierce. "Stay close, human," she commanded. "You pulled the thorn, now you share my fight." Eric's blood ran cold. He had come searching only for shelter, but instead he had stepped into the path of something far greater, something that would test not only his courage but the meaning of what it was to be human. And under the twin suns, as shadows drew nearer, the uneasy bond between human and Beastwoman was forged in the desert of fire and blood. The night fell over the desert like a heavy curtain. The twin moons rose, painting silver light across the dunes. The wind grew colder, carrying whispers through the sand. Eric sat near a small fire he had built, sparks rising into the sky like tiny stars. Across from him sat the Beastwoman, her glowing eyes fixed on him without blinking. The wound in her leg was wrapped in cloth torn from his own sleeve. Dark blood had slowed, but the skin still pulsed with heat. She leaned against a rock, her body tense, her claws resting on her knees. She looked like a predator waiting for the right moment to strike. Eric broke the silence first. His voice was careful. "You should rest," he said. "The poison might still be inside you." Her lips curled, showing sharp teeth. "Rest is weakness," she answered. Her tone was hard, but he could hear the strain hidden in it. She glanced at the fire, then back at him. "Why did you help me? Human, you could have left me to bleed. You could have run." Eric stared into the flames. He thought of the stories told by travelers, stories of humans being torn apart by beast women. Yet when he saw her fall, when he saw the thorn buried in her flesh, he could not walk away. "Because no one deserves to suffer like that," he replied. His words were simple, honest. Her eyes narrowed as if trying to read his soul. She leaned closer, her voice low and dangerous. "Do not think my life is yours because of this," she growled. "I do not belong to you. You pulled the thorn, yes, but I could still tear you apart with my hands." Eric did not move. He kept his gaze calm, steady. "Maybe," he said softly, "but you didn't." For the first time, silence hung between them, not filled with threat, but with something else, something uncertain. She leaned back again, her breathing heavy. Her claws tapped lightly against the stone. The desert was quiet for a moment. Then, a howl rose in the distance, long and sharp. It echoed through the dunes, answered by another howl, and then another. Eric stiffened. His hand reached for the small knife at his belt. The Beastwoman's head turned toward the sound, her amber eyes glowing brighter. "They are close," she said. Her voice had changed, softer yet filled with warning. "The hunters follow my trail. They can smell the wound. They will not stop until I am dead." Eric's chest tightened. "Hunters," he repeated. His voice carried unease. She nodded slowly. "My own kind," she admitted. Her gaze shifted away as if the words tasted bitter. "They strike the weak. They strike those who stumble. It is their way." Eric studied her face in the firelight. He saw more than fury in her now. He saw pain, not only of the wound, but of betrayal. She had been abandoned, hunted by those she once called her own. "Then why trust me?" Eric asked, his voice careful again. "Why let a human touch you when your kind would kill for such weakness?" Her jaw tightened. For a long moment, she did not answer. Finally, she said, "Because you are not of them. Because you stared at me, but you did not run. That makes you dangerous in a different way." Eric gave a faint smile. "Dangerous," he repeated. "I'll take that as a compliment." Her eyes locked with his, glowing in the moonlight. The fire crackled between them, but the air carried something new, not just hostility. It was fragile, thin as glass, but it was a truce. Suddenly, the howls grew louder, closer. The Beastwoman pushed herself up, wincing as her legs shook. But she stood tall, towering above Eric. "The night is no longer ours," she said. "If you wish to live, human, you will walk with me." Eric rose to his feet. His knife felt small, useless compared to her claws, but something inside him told him to follow. He nodded once, then lead the way. They left the fire behind. Moving across the dunes, her stride was slower than before, her wound still fresh, yet her presence was fierce. The moonlight wrapped around her frame, and Eric realized he was walking beside both a protector and a threat. The sand shifted under their boots and claws. Every sound carried weight. Every shadow felt alive. The howls grew into growls, echoing closer. As they moved, Eric dared to ask, "What is your name?" Her head turned sharply. Her eyes flashed. "Names are not for prey," she said, her tone harsh, but then she hesitated. "Call me Koresh." Koresh, Eric repeated, tasting the name. It felt heavy on his tongue, powerful. She looked ahead again, her amber eyes scanning the horizon. "Do not forget it, human. If I fall tonight, the hunters will remember who stood at my side." Eric's heart thudded. He had never asked to share her fight, but the desert had already decided, the fragile truce between man and Beastwoman was sealed, not by trust, not by friendship, but by survival. And as the howls closed in, the fire of conflict burned brighter under the alien moons. The desert night was alive with whispers. The wind carried more than sand. It carried the voices of hunters, low growls and sharp cries. Koresh walked ahead with steady steps, her shoulders tense, her amber eyes glowing as if they could pierce the darkness. Eric followed close behind, his hand tight around the handle of his knife, though he knew it would do little against creatures born to kill. The moons above cast pale silver across the dunes. Long shadows moved like ghosts across the sand. Every shape made Eric's heart race. Every sound seemed louder than it should. He felt small under the endless sky. But beside him walked a figure that belonged to this world. Koresh was both wounded and powerful. Her presence alone made the desert seem less endless. "They are circling," she said suddenly. Her voice was low, but her ears twitched as if catching sounds he could not. "The hunters play with their prey. They will not strike until they taste our fear." Eric's breath caught. "And what if I already feel fear?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. Koresh turned her head slightly. Her lips curled into something between a smirk and a snarl. "Then you hide it. Human, fear is a scent. It draws teeth." They climbed a ridge, the sand slipping beneath their steps. At the top, Koresh knelt and pressed her clawed hand into the sand. Eric watched as she studied the grains. Her eyes narrowed. 3 of them. No. 4. They spread wide, waiting for us to stumble. Eric shivered. The thought of unseen eyes watching from the dark made his skin crawl. "Why do they hunt you?" he asked. "You're one of them, aren't you?" Koresh's jaw tightened. Her gaze stayed fixed on the horizon. "I was," she admitted. The word carried weight, sharp and heavy. "But weakness is not forgiven in my kind. When the thorn pierced me, I fell to them. That is enough to call me prey." Eric frowned. "So they want you dead because of a wound." Her claws dug into the sand. Her voice came like a growl. "Because strength is all that matters. To fall is to lose honor. To bleed is to invite death. They see me as broken, and broken ones are hunted until none remain." The wind howled through the dunes. Eric felt anger stir inside him. Humans knew weakness too, but weakness was not always the end. He wanted to tell her that, but the look in her eyes stopped him. Her world was built on rules as harsh as the desert itself. A distant growl echoed again, closer this time. Koresh rose, her body tall against the moons. She looked down at him. "If you stay with me, you share my fight. Do you understand, human?" Eric nodded slowly. His voice was quiet but firm. "I understand." They moved again, the sand cold under their steps. Soon they found the remains of an old ruin half buried in the dunes. Broken stone pillars jutted out like the bones of giants. Koresh led him into the shadows of the ruin. "Here we wait," she whispered. "The hunters will come, but stone is better than open sand." They sat in silence, Eric leaning against the broken wall. Koresh crouched like a beast ready to spring. Her breathing was steady, but he could see the pain in her leg, even hidden behind her pride. After a long silence, Eric spoke. "Koresh," he said softly, "do you ever grow tired of fighting?" Her amber eyes flicked to him, her expression unreadable. "Tired," she repeated. The word seemed strange to her. "No, but I wonder." She paused, her gaze lifting to the moons. "I wonder what it would be to live without claws always raised, without eyes always watching. But that is not the life of my kind." Eric studied her face in the moonlight. For a moment, she did not look like a predator. She looked like someone carrying a burden too heavy to set down. He almost said something more, but the sound cut him off. A hiss, low and sharp, came from the edge of the ruin. Then another hiss followed. Eric's grip tightened on his knife. Koresh rose slowly, her claws glinting in the silver light. "They are here," she whispered. Her voice was calm, but her body was fire and steel. She crouched low, ready to strike. Her eyes never left the shadows. Eric's heart thundered in his chest. The air seemed to thicken. Every second stretched longer. Then, from the dark, two figures slithered into view. Their shapes were tall and lean, their bodies marked with glowing patterns similar to Koresh's, but their eyes burned with hunger. One of them hissed, baring teeth sharp as blades. "Koresh," it spat. "Fallen Koresh, the Thorn marked you. The desert claims you." Koresh bared her teeth in return, her voice a snarl. "The desert has not claimed me yet." Eric stood at her side. Though his knees trembled, he raised his small knife. It looked pitiful against the hunter's claws, but he would not step back. The hunters laughed, a sound like breaking bones. "And you bring a human," one sneered. "Will he die for you, Beastwoman?" Koresh's eyes flared like fire. "No," she growled. "He will fight beside me." The hunters circled, their steps slow and sure. The ruins seemed to close in around them. Eric's grip was slick with sweat, Koresh's claws flexed, and the desert night held its breath. The fragile truce was about to be tested in blood. The desert moons hung high, silver light spilling over the ruins. The night was quiet for a heartbeat, then broken by the sound of claws scraping against stone. The hunters moved closer, their bodies lit by faint glowing marks, their eyes sharp like blades. Koresh stood tall, though her wound throbbed. She spread her claws wide, the fire in her eyes daring them to step forward. Eric stayed at her side, his knife trembling in his hand. He was no match for these creatures, but running now would mean death. The first hunter struck like lightning. Its claw flashed through the air toward Eric. Koresh moved with a snarl, her arms sweeping up. The clash rang out as claw met claw. Sparks lit the night. The hunter hissed, stumbling back, surprised by her speed. The second hunter lunged low, aiming for her wounded leg. Pain shot through Koresh's body, but she twisted, her claws slashing across its chest. A dark spray hit the sand. The creature shrieked, its glowing marks dimming for a moment. Eric's breath came fast. He saw shadows shift. Two more hunters were circling. He realized the fight was not just strength, but numbers. They wanted to wear her down, break her piece by piece. "Stay behind me," Koresh commanded, her voice sharp as steel. But Eric shook his head. "If I do nothing, we both die." He answered. His knife looked small, but courage burned in his chest. The third hunter leapt, claws outstretched. Eric ducked low, the air slicing above his head. He swung his blade wildly. It cut across the hunter's arm, a shallow wound but enough to make the creature snarl. Its eyes snapped toward him, hatred burning. Koresh roared. Her claw struck the distracted hunter, smashing it against a broken wall. The stones cracked, dust rising into the air. The beast slumped but still hissed, crawling back to its feet. The fourth hunter moved with cunning. It stayed back, watching, waiting for weakness. Its glowing eyes locked on Koresh's leg. Eric saw it, and fear surged. He shouted, "Koresh, to your right." She spun just in time. Her claws crossed a block, but the hunter's strike was heavy. It knocked her back a step. Her wound bled fresh, staining the sand. For the first time, Eric saw her stagger. The hunters laughed, their voices like broken stone. "You bleed. Koresh, you fall. Koresh, you die tonight." Eric's heart pounded. He could not let it end like this. Not after pulling the thorn. Not after walking into her fight. He gripped his knife tighter. "Then she won't fall alone," he said through clenched teeth. Koresh looked at him, her eyes flashing with something new. For a moment, it was not anger or pride. It was respect. "Human," she growled. "Do not die before me." The hunters charged as one, the ruin filled with sound, stone cracking, claws tearing, roars echoing through the night. Koresh moved like a storm, her claws ripping across one hunter's chest. Her teeth sank into another's shoulder. The sand turned dark with blood. Eric darted behind her, striking when he could. His knife stabbed into a hunter's side. It wasn't deep, but it made the beast howl, giving Koresh the opening to finish it with a brutal slash. The fight raged. Every breath was fire. Every second a choice between life and death. The hunters were strong, But they had not expected the human to stand. They had not expected him to fight. At last, the last hunter remained. Its glowing marks burned brighter, fury in its eyes. It snarled, circling them. You cannot win, Koresh. A fallen beast has no place among us. Koresh's chest heaved, her claws dripping with blood. She stood taller, her voice shaking the night. I am not fallen, she roared. And this human fights with more honor than you ever knew. With a final leap, the hunter lunged. Koresh and Eric moved together. Her claws slashed from above. His knife drove upward. The hunter screamed, its body twisting before it fell into the sand, unmoving. Silence filled the ruins. Only the crackle of the dying fire and the hiss of the wind remained. Eric gasped for air, his arms shaking. Koresh stood over the fallen hunters, her body trembling but unbroken. The desert was quiet once more. The fight was done, but the night had changed something between them. Eric looked at her, his chest rising and falling. We survived, he whispered. His voice was small against the vast night. Koresh turned her amber eyes on him, her face fierce yet softened by something he could not name. We survived because you stood, she said. Her tone was heavy, not with threat, but with truth. For the first time, she lowered her claws, just slightly. It was not surrender, but it was a sign. A fragile bond had been forged in blood and battle. Eric realized then that he was no longer just a traveler in the desert. He was part of something larger, something dangerous, and the story of Koresh, the Beastwoman, was now his story too. The ruins were silent after the clash. The hunters lay scattered across the sand, their glowing marks fading like dying embers. The night wind carried the smell of blood and dust. Eric wiped his knife on the sand, his hands shaking. His heart still pounded from the battle, but he knew it was not over. Koresh leaned against a broken pillar, her body heaving. Her wound throbbed, dark blood still seeping through the cloth wrapped around her leg. She stared at the thorn Eric had pulled earlier, now lying in the sand. Its black surface shimmered faintly under the moons, as if alive. Eric followed her gaze. That thorn, he said slowly. It wasn't normal, was it? Koresh's eyes narrowed. Her voice was low. No, it was no accident. That thorn was forged, not grown. It carries poison crafted by my own kind. It marks the shamed, the weak, the fallen. Eric's stomach turned. They did this to you. She nodded once, her jaw clenched. When a warrior falters, the council brands them with this curse. They drive the thorn deep, so all may see. It burns the flesh, weakens the blood, and calls the hunters. It is both a wound and a signal. Eric stared at the strange object, his mind swirled. So they wanted you to die, he whispered. They made sure of it. Koresh's claws dug into the stone behind her. Her voice was sharp with fury. Yes, to them. I am no longer Koresh the Fierce. I am Koresh the Marked, prey to be hunted until the desert takes my bones. The silence pressed heavy between them. Eric felt a strange anger rise in his chest, not for himself, but for her. He had seen cruelty among humans, but this felt deeper, a cruelty turned into law. He picked up the thorn, holding it carefully between his fingers. It pulsed faintly, a faint glow traveling along its jagged edges. This is not just poison, he said. It feels alive. Koresh's eyes fixed on him. It whispers, she said quietly, when it was in me. I heard it, a voice telling me I was nothing, telling me I had no honor, telling me to give in to the sand. That is why many marked ones walk into the desert willingly. They cannot fight the whisper. Eric felt a chill crawl down his spine. He threw the thorn onto the sand, wanting it away from his skin. Then why didn't you give in? He asked. Her amber eyes glowed, reflecting the firelight. She looked at him for a long moment, then said, because you came, because you stared and did not run, because you pulled it out. The whisper lost its hold. Eric swallowed hard. He was only a traveler, yet somehow he had shifted the path of a warrior's fate. Then maybe it wasn't just me, he said softly. Maybe you were stronger than the thorn, stronger than the whisper. Koresh tilted her head, as if weighing his words. For a moment, her fierce face softened, not with weakness, but with something close to acceptance. The wind rose, carrying the faint sound of more howls in the distance. Koresh's claws flexed, but she did not move. Instead, she asked, Why do you care? Human, you could walk away now. You could leave me to my fate. Eric met her gaze, steady this time. Because I don't believe in leaving someone to die when I can help. Because strength isn't just claws and blood. It's standing when you have every reason to fall. Her amber eyes flickered, like fire catching new flame. She gave a slow nod. Strange words for a fragile creature, she said. But perhaps not so fragile after all. They sat in silence again, the fire crackling between them. Eric could not stop looking at the thorn. The thought gnawed at him. If her people had made it, others could be marked, others hunted. It was not just her story. It was something larger. Koresh seemed to sense his thoughts. Her voice dropped lower. The council fears what they cannot control. Any warrior who questions, any warrior who defies, they mark them. The thorn is not only punishment, it is silence. Eric's chest tightened. Silence, he repeated. She nodded. Yes, they silence the strong who refuse to obey. They make them pray so no voice rises against their rule. The truth hit Eric like a heavy stone. This was not just cruelty. It was power, a system built to crush those who dared to stand alone. He looked at Koresh, her scarred body lit by the flames, and realized she was more than a beastwoman hunted in the desert. She was a symbol of something greater. The night deepened. The whispers of the hunters faded for now, but the weight of the thorn remained heavy. Eric knew the path ahead would not just be survival, it would be choice. He glanced at Koresh. Then what now, he asked. She stared into the fire, her claws curling tight. Now, she said, I hunt the truth, and if you stay beside me, human, you will see what no human has ever seen. You will see the heart of my kind, and you will see why the thorn must be broken forever. The fire crackled, the desert winds howled, and the thorn lay between them like a shadow, silent but alive. The desert dawn rose with a pale fire. The suns broke the horizon, staining the sky in red and gold. The ruins behind them were quiet. The hunters' bodies already swallowed by drifting sand. Eric and Koresh moved forward, their steps slow but steady. Every dune brought them closer to the place Koresh dreaded yet could not avoid, her tribe. Koresh limped, her wound bound tightly, but her spirit did not bend. Her amber eyes burned with purpose. Eric walked at her side, tired yet unwilling to falter. He had chosen this path, even if it was not his fight. As the day stretched on, the land shifted. Jagged stone ridges rose from the sand. At last, towers carved from black rock appeared in the distance. Eric saw structures shaped like claws tearing upward toward the sky. This was no camp. This was a fortress of her people. Koresh stopped at the ridge. Her chest rose and fell slowly. Beyond those walls, she said, her voice sharp, is the council. They marked me with the thorn. They sent the hunters. They will see you as nothing but prey. Eric looked at her, his jaw set. Then let them, he replied. I won't step back. Her eyes flickered with a mix of anger and surprise. You are a fool, she hissed. A fragile human cannot stand before them. Eric shook his head. Maybe fragile, maybe weak, but not silent. His voice grew firm, stronger than before. You told me the thorn silences those who resist. Then someone has to speak. If not you, then me. For the first time, Koresh was silent. Her claws flexed. Her eyes studied him. Then slowly, she gave a small nod. Then you will walk into the den of wolves, human, and you will see if your words hold weight. They entered the fortress. Stone walls loomed high, etched with glowing marks like scars. Warriors lined the gates, their eyes burning with suspicion. Some snarled at Koresh, others whispered. Eric could feel the tension. It pressed down like heavy air. Inside, the council waited. 5 elders sat upon black stone seats, their bodies larger, older, their marks glowing brighter than any others. Their eyes were cold, sharp as blades. Koresh stood before them, her body straight, her wound hidden beneath pride. Eric stood beside her, small in their shadow but unyielding. One elder leaned forward, his voice thunderous. Koresh, marked and fallen, you should not stand here. You should lie in the sand with the dead. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Koresh's claws twitched, but she did not answer. Eric stepped forward, his heart pounded, but his voice did not shake. She is not fallen, he said. His words echoed strangely against the stone. She fought. She lived. She stood against hunters you sent. That is not weakness. That is strength. The council's eyes turned to him. Their gazes cut like knives. One elder sneered. A human speaks. A fragile outsider dares to judge us. Eric met their eyes, his hands clenched at his sides. I may be human, but I saw her fight. I saw her bleed. And I saw her stand again. You call it weakness, but where I come from, it is courage. The chamber grew heavy. Koresh's gaze flicked to him, her eyes wide with something unspoken. Another elder growled. Humans are nothing. You are prey. You have no voice here. Eric's chest tightened. Fear pressed hard, but he forced his words out. Maybe I am prey to you, but if being prey means leaving the wounded to die, if it means branding the strong as weak, then I would rather be prey than be blind. Gasps rose from the warriors who watched. Koresh's claws curled tighter, her jaw firm. The council shifted uneasily, and used to being challenged by one so small. The eldest elder rose slowly, his shadow stretched long across the chamber. His voice was deep, carrying power. You speak bold, human, but words do not change the law. The thorn is tradition. It is judgment. It cannot be broken. Eric stepped forward, his eyes locked on the elder. Then your tradition is built on fear. You silence those who stand. You destroy your own strength. If this is honor, then it is hollow. The silence that followed was sharp. Koresh's heart pounded. She had fought many battles, but never one like this. The human's voice carried something her people had forgotten, the courage to defy without claw or fawn. At last, the elder's gaze turned to Koresh. And you, Koresh, do you let this fragile thing speak for you? Koresh's eyes blazed. She stepped forward, her claws glinting. No, she growled. He does not speak for me. He speaks with me. His courage is his own, and I will not let you silence it. The warriors around the chamber murmured louder. Some eyes burned with anger, others with doubt. The air trembled with the weight of change. Eric felt the fire in his chest burn brighter. He had spoken, he had stood, and in that moment, he realized this was no longer just Koresh's fight. It was theirs. The council's silence stretched, but the spark had been lit. The chamber of stone was heavy with silence. The air was thick with the stares of warriors and the glow of council fire. Koresh stood tall despite the blood in her leg, her claws flexing at her side. Beside her, Eric's chest rose and fell, his heart beating fast but his eyes steady. The eldest elder leaned forward, his deep voice echoing. You come here marked. Koresh, you come with prey at your side. You stand against tradition. What do you choose now? Koresh's amber eyes burned in the firelight. She looked at the faces around her, warriors who had once been her kin. Some sneered. Others shifted uneasily. The weight of their judgment pressed hard, but she did not bow. I choose to stand, she said. Her voice carried across the hall, strong and clear. You call me fallen, but I fought. You sent hunters, and I survived. You planted a thorn to break me, but it was pulled free. I am Koresh, and I will not be silenced. A ripple went through the warriors. Some growled in anger. Others stared in surprise. The council's eyes narrowed, but Koresh's words could not be taken back. Eric stepped forward. His voice shook, but did not break. She speaks the truth, he said. Your thorn is not honor. It is fear. You fear those who defy you. You fear strength that does not obey. That is why you brand your own. But today, you cannot silence her. Gasps rose again. Warriors whispered to one another. A few nodded, their eyes darting between Koresh and Eric. The eldest elder slammed his claw against the stone. Sparks burst. Enough, he thundered. Tradition cannot be broken. The thorn cannot be defied. To stand against it is to stand against the council, against the law itself. Koresh's claws dug into the stone floor. Her voice was sharp as a blade. Then the law is broken, not me. She roared. Her chest heaved. Her amber eyes flared like fire. You call me weak, but weakness is hiding behind false strength. Weakness is killing your own to keep power. I will not be part of it. The warriors erupted into shouts. Some roared for her blood. Others cried out in support. The chamber shook with voices. The council rose, their glowing marks bright with fury. Eric stood at her side. Though his body trembled, His voice cut through the chaos. "If you kill her, you kill the last of your honor," he said. His tone was not loud, but it carried weight. "If a human must remind you of what strength truly is, then maybe your law is already dead." The words struck deep. The chamber stilled. Even the elders hesitated. Koresh turned slowly, her gaze locking on Eric. In his eyes she saw no claws, no marks, no glowing power. Yet his courage had shaken the walls of her people more than any blade. For a moment, she felt the desert itself pause, the choice heavy in her hands. She could bow to the law, accept the silence, and die as the council demanded, or she could defy them fully, stand with the human who had risked everything, and carve a new path. Her claws rose high. Her roar filled the chamber. "I am not prey," she declared, "and I will not walk alone. This human stood when no one else would. His courage is my witness. His defiance is my proof. From this day, I fight not for your law, but for freedom from it." The chamber erupted. Warriors split. Some raised their claws in rage. Others slammed fists against stone in support. The council hissed, their authority shaken. The eldest elder snarled, "Then you are cast out forever, Koresh. You and the human will be hunted until the sands drink your bones." Koresh bared her teeth, but she did not tremble. She turned to Eric, her voice lower now, yet firm. "Then let them hunt. They will learn that prey can bite. They will learn that silence cannot hold." Eric met her gaze. His throat was dry, but he gave a small nod. "Then we face it together," he said. The two of them turned, walking out of the chamber side by side. Warriors shouted behind them, some with fury, some with hope. The desert winds howled through the open gates as they stepped into the blazing dawn. Outside, the world stretched wide. The suns rose higher, painting fire across the dunes. Koresh's shadow stretched long across the sand. Eric's smaller shadow joined it. Together they walked into the unknown, hunted by a council, bound by a choice. The thorn was broken, but the fight had only begun. And in the heart of the desert, a legend was born, of a Beastwoman marked as fallen and a human who refused to run. Together they carried a truth too sharp to silence, a defiance too strong to bury. The desert would remember, the stars would remember, and so would every voice that dared to rise.